Welcome to Geek on Film with your hosts, Robbie Holmes and John Hosch. Welcome, and episode 20 of Geek on Film has started. How are you doing? This is Robbie Holmes.
Hey guys, it's John. 20. We're one episode away from being able to legally podcast drink.
So we're here and we've made it. This is really exciting, and hopefully you've been there with us the whole time. Just a reminder, we're geekonfilm.com. We're geekonfilm.com on Twitter and Instagram and all those other places. There's even a Mastodon. You can find all of that on geekonfilm.com. In our footer, it has all of our social media links. So let's jump into what we've watched. We got a bunch of stuff to get through. I'm going to kick us off. So I finished The Big Brunch. My wife and I have really enjoyed this show. This is the show by Dan Levy, where he and two other people evaluate up-and-coming chefs who are trying to do something important in their communities. The last three episodes we finished this week. The interesting piece of that is they had a celebrity chef come in to evaluate some of the work of the chefs in episode 5, and they failed. No one did well. So they literally did a reset. They were like, nobody gets best in brunch. We're all going to try this again. Wow. And we're really disappointed that you embarrassed us in front of our new friend. So it was pretty brutal and awful. But I also think they needed to hear that, right? Like they overthought what they were doing. They didn't have a good plan. And then the next one was like a group challenge, which is pretty cool. And, it's been a really amazing show. I think it is taken all the best parts of cooking competitive shows, and you see heart in it. Even in the finale, somebody asked for something and then somebody else came over and helped somebody else without any like, it was amazing to see these people who had $300,000 on the line to do what it was they wanted to do in their community. And they still would stop and say, like, do you need me to start a pot of water? Do you like with That's one great. Another, nice. So much heart, so unbelievably beautiful when it came right down to the end. And again, this is a show that curses, which really feels real. Like, there was a really great moment where one of those chefs was just like, I can't believe I fucked up. And like, there's power in that. Like, as much as you could bleep that out, I just think it's so much more realistic. And seeing that on HBO Max is one of the things that I really loved about this show.
Yeah. Yeah. The power of the F word, man. I always think that I always enjoy the TV shows and the sitcoms and reality shows that, if they have to bleep them out, like bleep them out, but like don't edit them out. You know what I mean? Like don't, like if you want to write them in, then write them in and bleep it out. And then when it goes on DVD or streaming, then you can take it out. So,
yep.
Is this show, have you ever watched like The Great British Bake Off? I've never watched it, but everyone tells me to watch it. I wonder if this is
I've never watched that. I feel like I watched a ton of like Hell's Kitchen, America's Worst Chefs, America's Best Chefs. Like there was a while where I watched a lot of cooking shows. I was sort of addicted to the Food Network.
Totally. Like wasn't Chopped, that was a show, right? Wasn't that a show?
Chopped is one of my favorites. I love the premise, right? The idea that you can put together a box and in the box will be desperate ingredients that may not mesh up and you have to make something out of them. The idea being that you go to your pantry or your fridge and you make whatever you have.
Right.
I love that premise. I think it's really cool. It got a little wonky at times. It would be like, sea cucumber and sea urchin and caramel. And you're like, okay. But in the end, those shows didn't. The thing I think I love the most about The Big Brunch is that the whole show is about the idea that they were trying to find somebody that they could invest in, right? The idea was like, this person has a vision for how to help people and wanted to do something unique.
That's cool.
And there was a ton of Virginia representation too. There was like 4 chefs, I think, out of the 10 that were from here in Virginia, which was really exciting.
And this is now like the whole season's out now, right? You can watch the whole season.
Yep, you can binge it on HBO Max now.
Nice. Cool. Well, I am continuing to watch Willow on Disney Plus. Episode 3 came out this week, and it really confused me.
It's not what I was expecting. Okay.
It was really confusing. So, I don't know what I don't think they know, or I don't know where the tone of this show is going. like I don't know what to do about it. Like I'm like, I want you to be so good, but I'm like, you're so weird. Like there so the weird things that happened this week. So there's a part where two characters are talking about this like legendary kind of like piece of armor, and then they like they dramatize this woman back in long ago like building this piece of armor, and then she's got this like weird sci-fi Star Wars looking cylinder that she inserts into it, and it like does all this like robotic sci-fi stuff and like starts glowing green and stuff. And I was like, what the hell is this? And then also, I think the standout for episode 3 is there's a guest spot from Hannah Waddingham, who if you've watched Ted Lasso, she's like the owner of like the football club that hires Ted Lasso. She's really great. I believe
She's amazing.
she's won many awards for that role. Well,
Yep.
she's in this too, and a character stumbles across her um uh a character stumbles across her um and another character, and both she and this other character who doesn't speak, they're like dressed in denim, and they have like like their costumes are all modern, and I was like, wait, did we like jump through like a time portal or something? Like costuming was so weird. And then they did the thing that happened in that we talked about in House of the Dragon, where they clearly filmed day for night, and they were like doing a huge fight scene in the daytime,
Yep.
and then they just like changed like the filters on it, and it was like, really hard to see, and it was really frustrating.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the show, when they're like revving up and they're like trying to send us off into episode 4 for next week and get us excited, they're like like they're on this journey, and they come to like this really scary place, and then Willow says like, I know exactly where they're taking this person. I'm trying to be as vague but as interesting as I can. And then all of a sudden you hear dong dong ding dong 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 ding dong, and this version of Enter Sandman starts playing, but it has a female vocalist doing it. And I was like, what is this show? So I'm so confused to like what I'm so confused as to like the meeting when they're like, all right, we're gonna do a television show of Willow, and these are all the things we want in it. But I mean, it's like, I got to be honest. It's kind of to me, it's like a bit of a train wreck now. I've like kind of like gone 180 about the show, but it's like I can't not watch because I'm like, is this going to get better or is it going to get even worse? And like, you want to be there when it gets worse, but you also want to be there when it gets better. So I don't know, man. It's only
You seem
episode 3.
invested no matter what direction this goes at this point.
I guess so. It's you know what, it's a bad relationship that I have with Willow. So that's where I'm
I
at.
will jump over to something that is a great relationship. I watched 2 more episodes of Wednesday with my wife. This is a show. So I try really hard to find shows that we can watch together.
Mhm.
This week I didn't get around to any of the stuff that I've been watching because I've been watching other films. But this was great. This continues sort of the first 4 episodes. I think are all directed by Tim Burton.
Mhm.
This the second episode is the one with the Poe Cup, which is them having the race in the boats,
Mhm.
which I think is cute. I think you finally get a chance to see Wednesday admitting she's friends with her roommate and supporting her, even though she doesn't want anybody to know. Basically, I listened to a podcast that talked a lot about the show and about how in Wednesday the character in the Addams Family movies gets to be completely monotone and completely droll, and that's because everybody around her isn't.
Mhm.
In this show, we have weird all around her,
Yeah.
and yet we have the amazing sardonic like delivery of Jenna Ortega and her extremely expressive eyes and face that
Mhm.
tell you when something's weird. And I think
Mhm.
that's the selling. Like, I don't think this show would have worked. I think Jenna Ortega is intricate to this show. I think her casting is perfect. I think her look is perfect, but I think also her acting is perfect. Like, without
Mhm.
her ability to pull off every scene and not feel like it doesn't connect, and that she is out of place, or just part of the fabric of the show. She has the ability to be both unique and further along the story than anybody around her. She's always like one step ahead. Her delivery is crisp and bitey, and smart, right? Like every time something she opens her mouth, it feels clever, and I think that could have gone really wrong with the wrong actor.
Yeah, I think that I think that she's put a lot of work into the show, and I think that they put a lot of work in working around her as well. I think, yeah, it's. I think, I mean, yeah,
Well, and
you
the
can't
next episode is where
separate
they end up
the.
with the secret society.
Mm,
So that episode is really great because she has to solve a mystery, and the mystery leads to the puzzle you're solving is literally an entrance code that gets you into a room, and
mm,
it's perfectly aligned with the previous shows, uh, and it's clever. Like it's just
yeah,
and I honestly I really like Emma Myers, who's playing her roommate, a lot. I think
yeah, she's
her
great.
energy she like is right against the I can't possibly be more bubbly, and
Mm,
then she explodes because she's angry about something. Like they push that as far as they can until like her bubbly nature explodes into violence for a second, and then she's like back to being like I have to be in control. Like, I think
yeah,
they've cleverly cast the two of them as like the opposite sides of the same coin in lots of ways.
yeah,
Um,
totally.
yeah, they work really well together, and I think that is working for me.
Yeah. I wanted to talk really quickly about. I'm continuing to watch Tulsa King, and I'm continuing to enjoy it even more and more. So
I
this
think you
is
should have to say it like Tulsa King.
Tulsa King. Hey, how you doing? But that's the thing, man. This is Stallone's first foray into a television episodic show, and he's
Hmm.
like, can't take your eyes off of him. He's so good in it. And the character is, he's a mobster, ex-con now, and as I'm there are 5 episodes out, and I'm caught up now, and like he's having issues with the mafioso family that has kind of exiled him to Tulsa. He has issues with people in Tulsa that he's coming across, trying to like make kind of set up a business of extortion and selling like helium to kids and stuff for money. um and in some of the later episodes, you start to like meet the rival. Kind of there's like a biker gang that's like really scary in Tulsa, who is kind of you know butting up against him for what's the right word for territory and things like that. And it's like it's really cool and really scary and really intense. And dude, he's so good in it. Like I would not be surprised if he like if award season comes around and they notice him for this. Uh, yeah, and it's just kind of cool to kind of see him age into this role and also just kind of be super comfortable. And everything seems effortless. He's just such a badass. Whereas like in like some of the like the Expendables movies, he seems cool, but he also seems like he's trying to be cool. But this is just like he's literally like, and he's also always wanted like I saw an interview where like Stallone has always wanted to be a mobster, but no one's really given him a chance because he was like Rocky and Rambo
Yeah,
and this is just like it's just tailor made for him. It's so good. It's like Sopranos meets Sons of Anarchy. This is how I kind of think of it.
that's awesome.
Um,
I listen
really,
to Never Not Funny. It's one of my favorite podcasts, and Andrea Savage is really good friends with Jimmy,
mm,
who is the basis of the show. They actually
mm,
worked together many times. She came on and they were talking about Tulsa King, and she has nothing but positive things to say about the set, about Stallone, about
mm,
she's known Martin Starr for years because they're both sort of comedy people, and
huh,
she's like Martin's weird and I love it, and like we show up and he's like we're gonna play board games, and she's like I'm not playing board games, like apparently the set is just a blast, but and they're all working like
yeah,
Stallone's working hard on this show
Yeah,
from the perspective of other people in the show, right? Like this
that's
could have
great.
been a thing I feel like he could have phoned in and been like, whatever. But
Yeah,
like that, it doesn't not seem to be his ethos, right? Like we talked about Samaritan a while ago, and that, whatever you want to say about that movie, he works hard in that movie to play those
yeah,
characters, you know?
totally. Yeah,
And she said like he's been nothing but great to be in scenes with. Like so many of the scenes are between him and Stacy, her character.
hmm,
So like they're together a lot in scenes. Like he's a really good scene partner. Like, but it's amazing to like. I think that was part of it is that she's been around a lot of stuff. She's done a lot of comedy based television. So Jimmy was just like, "What's it like to work with Stallone?" Like was really so she's really a great ambassador for that because like Andrea is a really great interview and was
yeah.
just like Stallone and his family are awesome. Like they're just great people. Like yeah. So it was really interesting to hear that from another vector that you wouldn't have
Yeah.
heard.
Yeah, and Andrea Savage, who you're talking about, her character is really interesting too because like she's a little, she's kind of a middle-aged woman, and she meets Stallone, who's much older than her, but they have a connection. He's kind of intriguing to her, and there's like a bit of a one night stand and everything. And then later, and this is all in the earlier episode, so it's not big spoilers. But like the great thing is, you find out that she's an ATF officer, and once a mafia person moves to like an area, like there's an all points bulletin, like look who we're dealing with now. So like she didn't know that, and you're in the ATF office, and they get this like, all right, guys, this is who we're keeping an eye on now, and she's like, oh fuck. So but they keep this relationship because like Stallone's character is also very old school. He's very
Mhm.
polite. He like he does some he extorts people and stuff, but he's always like on the level in many ways, and he has mutual respect for everybody, and it's just a really great show.
I will jump over to White Lotus. I watched the last two episodes, I think, since the last time we spoke. So the
Yeah,
finale and the one before.
and he's been on since
Mike White
too.
really is a good job of filling the balloon. What he's not really good at, in my opinion, is letting the air out of the balloon at the end. The
Oh,
final episode, in my opinion, it crescendoed in the episode before the penultimate episode, in my opinion, was where the show hit its high point. It
mhm.
really crescendoed for me. It reached actually two before the finale. I think was the best episode of the season, but I think the final episode it wasn't as exciting to me as anything else that had happened in the show up to that point.
Was it more like an
Um,
epilogue, or it just fell flat for you?
well, the show opens with a dead body floating in the ocean, and you hear somebody say there's a body and there are other bodies.
Bodies,
So
bodies, bodies.
the first show, it opens with a dead body being loaded onto a boat,
Uh-huh.
and what I know I can tell you about the first show. I don't think you finished it. Is it's not like a who done it the way you would expect.
Right. It's not a
Um,
glass onion or anything like that.
right, and I think this season felt a little more charged. The first season was about like opulence and like how money really breaks you and really gives you less perspective on the world. And this
Mhm.
season was much more about sex and like the sins of the flesh is a lot of what was going on here, in my opinion. And I think the
Gotcha.
next one, he's talked about doing it in trying to approach like Eastern ideology a little bit more.
Oh,
He's
wow.
already at the end of it. He talks, yeah. So he has an idea for the third one already, and but I
Uh-huh.
think the problem was right. Like I had just spent a week listening to podcasts. Like there's a great podcast called the Prestige Podcast that Bill Simmons and Joanna Robinson are now doing about. The podcast has been around a long time, but it had not been really running. And they were
Uh-huh.
like, "Well, nobody's talking about White Lotus on the Ringer. Let's do it over there." Like, so they spun back up and really re-engaged, and it's been fun to listen to that. But they just did an entire episode where Mallory and Joanna came together and did theories. And
Mhm.
honestly, the theory corner was more interesting. This is where like writing the script for the movie you want. Like, I
Right.
kind of wish I had like ended episode 6 and went straight into episode 7, so I had no time to think about it
Uh-huh.
because we've spent the entire season trying to figure out who's going to die, and that's not what the point of the show is. I think the world we get to be a part of and the wackiness that the characters are the ringers that the characters are put through because of the weird world are what I think is more interesting. So I
Right.
think I have to reconfigure how I watch White Lotus. I have to go in to the finale knowing sort of like the finale is not the point of the show. The show
Right.
is everything that happened across all 7 episodes, and you get a chance to see all of that, and I think that's more interesting to me. I
It's
do
more
think
like
that
the. Oh, go
what's
ahead.
up?
I was gonna say
I
it's
just
more about.
was really impressed with some of the actors across the board. I think that Aubrey Plaza is fantastic in it. I think so there are 2 rich couples, Aubrey Plaza and her husband, and another couple that the husbands went to college together. So 2
Mm,
couples very different from one another, and then there's the family unit. There's a grandson, a son, and a grandfather, and then you have the 2 sex workers. Those are sort of, and then of course Tanya, played by Jennifer Coolidge, and her assistant. So there's
mhm.
like 4 stories going on, and the sex workers make their way through a couple of the storylines in really funny and amusing ways. But I think that's the show. The show is what happens for the 6 episodes. The finale is it should be almost like an epilogue, right? Like
Yeah.
what
Yeah, I hear.
this is all what happened. This is the output of it, you know?
Right.
I almost wish the body happened at the end of the 6th episode so we could see the fallout more than it being part of the finale. I think it would have deflated the balloon more effectively if
Mm,
we saw what started the mess at the finale in like almost if they had one more episode to do like the death episode and then a finale where they could have just had nothing but an hour of like all the shit show that created and everything, because I feel a little gypped because it took a long time to get to that, and the
mm.
episode's about an hour, and I don't think we don't get any real understanding of what's going on until about 35 minutes in. Like
Oh.
we're piecing it together, but then we've only got like 25 minutes to like have the outcome impact, you know?
Yeah. Do you think I don't know if this is a spoiler or not, but do you think Jennifer Coolidge will come back for season 3? Will she be a
Uh,
kind of you think she'll be like the through the thing that binds all the seasons together since she was in 1 and 2? Or is that
I'd be surprised.
not possible
I
depending on
would
what
be
happens?
surprised.
You would be surprised.
Yes.
Alrighty. Interesting.
Let's jump over into some films. We have an order listed here. I think I want to start off with Morbin Time because I think that is the silliness here. So I had held out and not seen Morbius. It is a film I felt like didn't need to be. I was not interested in the film they were creating. I was sort of not interested in the story they were telling. I also felt like it was a weird film. Jared Leto's sort of persona as a person in Hollywood is off-putting to me, but he's a good
Mhm.
actor is the way that's what I always come down to with him.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I went into this film with like really hesitant and really I was
No
at my
expectations, I
mother-in-law's
would say.
house. I was at my mother-in-law's house. I was testing out all the apps on her television, and I was
Oh,
like, "Oh yeah, Morbius is on Netflix." So like, my wife and my mother-in-law went out, and I was like, "I guess." So like, I watched half of it there, and then came home and finished it.
yeah.
And I think the biggest problem here is not Jared Leto. I think
Yeah.
it's the script. I think the script was not good.
Yeah. And I think there was a
I
lot
think
of yeah, so yeah, sorry.
yeah, go for it.
Quickly just to jump in, like, just for people who don't, for some reason, if you don't know what Robbie's talking about with Morbius, it's Morbius the living vampire is a Marvel comic book character, but this is not in the MCU because it's owned by Sony,
Sony.
which is the sorry.
Yep, it's Spider-Man-y. So
Yeah,
anything Spider-Man related is owned by Sony
yeah,
for the
so it's like
production side.
so it's like the Spider-Man universe, which is like Spider-Man, Venom, things like that.
I think we're
And
gonna get a Craven the Hunter, is what I hear.
maybe, but I think they don't know what they're doing over there at Sony. I think so. Who
Obviously,
knows?
you should watch the post-credit scenes.
Well, yeah, but yeah. Oh, well, that post. Wait, yeah, that's yeah. I I watched this movie. I don't remember when I saw this movie. I didn't hate it. Yeah, I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. I the thing I enjoyed the most in it is Matt Smith is in it, and spoiler alert, he's kind of a bad guy in it,
God,
and
that
he's
guy!
just
I love Matt Smith, and he chews
he,
all the scenery. He
yeah,
chews your scenery. He chews you. He chews the movie theater. He is all over this movie. He's so much fun and
yeah.
way over the top.
Yeah.
and
I
perfect. Like, great.
yeah.
No notes.
I think I think one of the big issues with this movie is like the time in which it's coming out to me was super problematic because you're dealing with a guy who is trying to get bitten by a bat to kind of get a disease, and then he does get a disease and it takes over his life. And in I just think with the current world we live in, it was just really problematic, especially in the height of COVID when this was coming out. I was like, let's not talk about bats and diseases right now. So
Yeah. I think the other problem is this movie suffered from not having a clear path to what its end goal was. Like, I
yeah,
think the effects, I think Jared Leto does a really good job of playing broken, right?
yeah,
So
sure,
he has a bloodborne disease that actually affects him. In the movie, he creates fake blood, synthetic blood, which he wins a Nobel Peace Prize for, but declines, which is also silly in the movie, right?
right,
They put him there in that scene and they never talk about it again, but they shot the Nobel Peace Prize. Like, why? There's so many things that I was just like, why did you waste this money?
yeah,
And then it's funny because I think the fake blood, the synthetic blood, is blue, so it's not red. And I think the
mm,
choice to make it blue was because if he was drinking red blood, it would be blood. So
mm.
it gets around the R rating. So it's another
That's
way to
very true,
skirt the
very
R
true.
rating,
Yeah,
right? Um, I think the effects of the way they handle him in a vampire form are really good.
yeah,
I think the problem is they they didn't know how to connect the tissue. So it feels very sloppy the way that the movie comes together.
mm,
That's the problem I have with it is like, he's his friend Milo is shady, has a lot of money, funds a lot of his work,
mhm.
without us knowing a lot about him. The doctor who takes care of them as kids is the same doctor that's taking care of Milo when he's older. He doesn't age one moment from the scenes where they're 8 to the scenes where they're 30. It's unbelievable. Like,
It's total
that's a
comic,
choice,
total comic book reality.
yeah. I think, there's I haven't seen it, but I heard that there is a movie called Dracula Unleashed, Dracula Untold,
Yeah, yep.
that is written by the same people that wrote this script. And apparently, that movie also ends in a similar way as this movie does, with a bat based Hadouken, basically.
Oh, maybe it did. I think if I'm thinking, is this like the movie that like Luke Owen or whatever? Not
I
Luke
think
Owen.
so. But I was listening to a podcast because I was like, I got to listen to everybody's like thoughts about this movie. And one of
Uh-huh.
them was just like, oh, these people wrote that movie, and that movie also has a connection with bats. And then they end very similarly. It's the sort of Wild Wild West, and that the producer was excited about a giant mechanical spider, which is why it is in the movie.
Sure. Yeah.
And it feels like there may need to be a trilogy of movies with bat Hadoukens if they were
Um,
left to their own devices.
Dracula Untold was one of the first movies I ever saw in the theaters with my wife. But we were dating, so it was the early dating, and so that movie holds a
So
very
the awkward, barely
precious.
touching hands. Yes.
Yeah, and just talking about Bat Hadouken. I don't remember the Bat Hadouken, but I remember that movie being pretty decent. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I think the big problem isn't as much as I would like to blame Jared Leto. I think the problem with this movie is the script, and I think it's also the editing. I think they
yeah,
shot a lot more of this film than they put on in the theater. Right, like, is the way I would
yeah,
put it. But and it's lean. The other thing is this movie was cost only, I think it was $85 million. So being able to come in under budget or like just at budget, this movie doesn't have to make $1 billion to be successful. And I think
sure,
that's the one thing I think they've done well on the Sony side, right? The Venom movie, the first Venom movie, I think only cost about 45 million to make, and it became a success. Like, it was
yeah,
358 million or something like that. So these movies are making money. They're the schlocky films in the 80s that we would go see in the movie theater, right? Like, I think we just have to accept that's the type of film it is.
right. Yeah, I mean, Yeah, and I think the studio had a lot of they were over involved in it
Yeah.
in while it was being made too, because like all the Venom references weren't in there originally, but then Venom was doing really well, so they're like, oh, you got to put a Venom, here's a memo that you have to put a Venom reference in there, and then
Yeah.
yeah,
This is the
so
craziest thing that's happened since San Francisco. And it's like, oh yeah, yeah,
yeah.
right.
Well, if we could jump from one schlocky movie maybe to another, I watched Christmas Bloody Christmas, which was it's a movie that you can watch on you can watch if you have a subscription to Shudder/AMC Plus. It's streaming over there. If not, you can rent it and everything like that.
It's also in the
This
theaters. I noticed it's all over
yes,
AMC right now. Yeah.
yeah. So this is a super again. It's like an hour and 26 minutes of your time if you want to see
I
a
watched the
movie.
trailer. Can I describe what I think the movie is?
Sure, and I'll
And then you
see.
can tell me if I'm right.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So a futuristic robot is made. It gets used and put in place, and there may be more than one of them, as a Santa Claus. And then it gets turned on into kill mode, basically. And it becomes a bloody Christmas because that crazy Santa is now in attack military mode.
You're pretty. I mean, you're like 98% right.
That's what I
The,
got from the trailer. So
yes, yeah. So it's you never find out why, but for some reason the military have created these like military robots that have been decommissioned, and then they are resold as like Santa Claus statues in toy stores and stuff. Um, it's like you barely pick up on that if you're not paying any attention. Um, and then yeah, this one particularly short circuits and just goes on a bloody rampage. This movie is very much like, um, you know, it's very much like an 80s slasher movie in that way, where it's like this like silent killer is coming and you're gonna get a lot of bloody kills that way, which are pretty. Some of them are pretty inventive. Um, and then it's like and then they kind of mix in there like an angsty like late 90s like Kevin Smith movie. Like there is a lot of dialogue in this where people are fighting about what they like. There's a very I was like I literally looked at my watch and I was like, is this scene still going on? Are these people still talking about their favorite bands or like their favorite movies? And there's the humans in this movie are very much just like outlets, I think, to like stuff that the director/writer wanted to get off his chest about. He's like, I want everyone to know that I really like this movie and I really like that movie. And that's fine. But I was also I honestly don't think I've ever heard the F bomb so much in my life in this dialogue. And I was like, is this all improv? And these guys are just like, they're just like fucking, blah, 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 fucking, or it's like, or if
it's
it's
probably better than
actually
the
written
amount of
in.
ums that I say every podcast. So I mean,
Maybe. So, if you're looking for like kind of, if you're a little intoxicated or you're a little under, if you're doing something and you want to get into some sort of Christmas Bloody Christmas, well, there's a movie called Christmas Bloody Christmas. It was fine. I kind of had a good time. I will say this one thing though: the set/lighting design of the movie is a little rough on the eyes to me, because there's like, you go back to the final girl, the final girl character. She's the lead, obviously, and like she's hanging out with this dude, and they're the ones who are like arguing, and you're like, oh, just fuck already.
is that the guy with the mullet and a leather jacket?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And like
See,
for
I paid
some,
attention to the trailer, dude.
yeah. So in her house though, she like has like neon lighting everywhere. Like, like the edges of her rooms are lined in like neon lighting. And it was like really like, it's like who designs this? I was like, you're not like, this doesn't take place in the world where this is like like a Twitch streamer where you have like the LED lights. It is like you're trying to be like hip and cool and like sexy, but I was like, I don't know if that's a good choice. But whatever. it's a totally fine movie to watch if you're like late night and you're like, I don't want to go to sleep and I want to drink this beer and I just want to like watch something a little bit mindless. Check it
Okay.
out.
I will now turn the corner into a film that I will be less charitable to. I think I cannot believe how many. Let me take a step back. I have a hashtag that I use once in a while, which is the worst use of a best cast.
Mhm.
Amsterdam may be at the top of that list. It is Christian Bale is unbelievable in this movie. And that is not something I say. I made a joke to my wife after watching this movie, and I'm like, I think that he pulled something off that he's never pulled off, which is I think Christian Bale was just the right amount of Christian Bale. Um, he is
Right on.
so good in this movie. But boy, this movie has no script. It feels
Yeah.
like they shot 100 hours of footage and they came up with a story in the editing room. Like there
Yeah.
is nothing connecting this story.
I it yeah, so I saw I saw you tweeted I think you tweeted about watching Amsterdam. So I
Yeah.
was like, "Oh, well maybe I should watch Amsterdam too so we can have a conversation about it."
And we actively didn't go see this movie in the theater because the person who produced and created this film is not a good person.
Yes.
Feel free to look up as much as you like. I'm very surprised the amount of people that worked with that person.
It's kind of
But
questionable why they're still working with them.
here we are. It's now on HBO Max. So I was like, it's part of my streamer. I already pay for it. I'm
Mhm.
intrigued. I've always wanted to. I think this movie made me actively angry because I was so excited about the trailer.
Mhm.
I don't know that I've been more let down from trailer to film in 2022 than this movie.
Yeah, and I will agree with you that I think Christian Bale was doing a very impressive performance. I thought that um
I think
there
he
are
sometimes goes too far in his in like his ability to go with physicality as part of
sure.
his. But like
Yeah.
this movie, his physicality is 100% warranted. Like the
Mm.
way that he carries his body because he wears a back brace
Yeah.
is extremely believable, right? Like every
Yeah.
aspect of who he like he understood the assignment. Like I joke around like that guy gets an A+ for the character he is portraying. There's no one that could have done that better, in my opinion.
Mm.
From the glass eye to the physicality of how he carries himself to his wacky hair to like his ability to like deliver lines with like gusto and also exuberance and also I'm broken. Like he's got it all. I normally am not this high on Christian Bale. He's so good in this film.
Yeah. So I think also so I don't know if I don't know if we've said Amsterdam, right? We're talking about Amsterdam. I think we said
I'm
that, but
not sure we said the title.
so we're talking about Amsterdam. And I I was so confused. I was like, what? I agree with you. I was like, what the hell is the point of this movie? There was a point where I was like, what is going on? I feel like I've been watching this for like 3 hours. I paused it. I had only been watching it for 22 minutes.
Yeah.
And I was like, good God, this feels like an eternity because nothing happens. I think the things that I found really interesting were I just think that it's very interesting to bring light to um, like how crappy veterans after this is World War II, right? Or World War One? World
One.
War One. How crappy veterans were being treated, and they were coming back and they were with like the loss of limbs, severely deformed and I thought that was a very interesting aspect of the movie where Christian Bale he is also a veteran. He suffers from, like a really bad injury for his back where he has a back brace and a glass eye. And he's trying to help all these other veterans by like making prosthetics for them and also like coming up with like new psychotropic drugs just for them to like deal with the physical and mental pain that they're dealing with. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you anything else that happens in this movie because I was just
Well,
like,
and
what's going on?
the
Why?
other thing to
Where?
note, right? Like in his performance, he's making these drugs and then he's taking them. And
Right.
and like half of the time he's like falling down within 6 to 10 seconds of him taking the drug. In any other performance, I would just be like, come on, man. But like he is in pain. He is obviously addicted to taking whatever is in front of him because of his pain, because of his anguish, because of who he is at this point in his
Mhm.
life. So like it's not played for laughs. It's played that this character is desperately trying to help people and uses himself as a guinea pig. And we get to see at one point that he like overdoses or he does way too many drugs while he's helping people in an alley because he gets kicked out of his high end like doctor's suite because he's trying to help veterans.
Yeah.
I think one note I want to pull in here is one of the podcasts I listened to that talked about this talked very heavily about the fact that like once we got to the fake eye sequence in the film that Christian Bale is wearing, that Bert is wearing, they feel like the lighting absolutely shifted for everyone in the film. That the cinematographer Emmanuel Lubusky highly focused everybody's eye color from that point forward. Once our eye was drawn to that character, that everybody had unique lighting and really highlighted their eyes. And you have really great eyes in this film, right? You've got Margot Robbie, you've got Anya Taylor-Joy, you've got Rami Malek, right? Like these are very unique looking people who have very beautiful and distinct eyes. And I think once we got to the point where Christian Bale and the focal point was his eye, it felt like the note was like everybody needs to have their eyes lit properly so we can see that they're real and that we're like it's part of the cinematography and production design of this film is what it felt like. And I realized that like while I was watching it, I'm like, I can't get over how cool like Rami Malek's character looks as being conspiratorial and like the camera angles they choose to shoot him with because he's kind of a handsome and interesting and strange looking guy, and having Anya Taylor-Joy just over his shoulder looking beautiful and just strange, not human in her beauty. Like the production design on this film is unbelievable, you know?
Yeah. And I concur. I totally concur. But man, it's just like really
there's
hard to
just
get through.
I feel like the worst part is like there's a ton of cameos there by really good people. The only thing I'm really sad about is I feel like the chemistry between Margot Robbie and John David Washington is really good. John David Washington just doesn't feel like he fits in this film. I feel like everyone else is slightly heightened, their personal chemistry between the two characters is really good. Everyone else feels like they're in this friggin' weird fairy tale fable world, whereas like John David Washington is extremely grounded. But they don't play it like he's a weird man out of time. They just let it be. There's no acknowledgement that he is this like solid ground where weird shit is happening around him. He's just in the scenes, which it feels like they lost an opportunity if you were going to have this like stoic, grounded character to like heighten and bring us into the conversation that the world around, he's always the sort of grounding the two, he's what grounds every scene that he's in. They don't ever let us in on that. You know, he just happens to be a steady hand in the way he delivers his lines, you know?
Well, I mean, I wonder if that's just, there is also a lot of talk about like him being like a black lawyer in this time period, you know, and I wonder if that also is trying like that was a way for them to kind of be like, yes, like, you know, like to make, like you felt weird about him, and maybe that was what they were trying to get across is like, you know, like he also weird or something. I'm not sure.
I think Chris Rock plays a really fun, like his scenes are really fun and feel like they are part of this movie. Like that's what it feels like is I feel like John David Washington, there are like some of the scenes where they're in war, where he's having he's having the direct conversation that other people aren't having are interesting. I just wish they had found a way to let the world around him acknowledge that he's grounding the world. Like his friends could have acknowledged that like he's the reason he brings them all back together. Like they never get to that, you know, even though he is the reason that like Margot Robbie's character, like Valerie finds her path, right? Like, or gives her something to lean into, you know, there's a lot of things that I think he's doing that I think with a little bit better script and maybe better editing, we could have utilized John David Washington as the narrator more and like the reason to see the world around him as wacky as it is. But this movie doesn't give us a narrator. It's at all. It doesn't give us a perspective. It's sort of everybody's perspective. It depends on which scene you're in, is my feeling, you know?
Yeah, I feel like if anything, like Christian Bale is like the closest thing to like majority wise, I guess.
Yeah,
but
I think he's the protagonist of the film is the way I would put it. I just don't know that we're supposed to, we're ever in his, like there are short moments where we get to see his perspective, but then it shifts constantly. It's a confusing film. That's the way I would put it.
Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna watch it again.
No, I don't think so either. Let's jump over to Troll, John.
Yeah, so really quickly, this movie came out on Netflix. It's a Norwegian film, and I thought it was really cool, and I think it's worth talking about. Where this is kind of like a Norwegian big monster kaiju movie where um, they're drilling into the ground, and there's a lot of talk of trolls in Norway, um, and they awaken a troll, and that's pretty much it. This is very much, this reminds me like another movie that came out a long, long time ago called Troll Hunter. That movie is so cool, and I think is a bit art housey in its execution, and it's a great story, and everything that Troll Hunter is, Troll isn't. And I don't mean that in a mean way. This is like, I think, like Norway's attempt at like a big budget Hollywood blockbuster movie. You have a giant troll who is on his way to a city to destroy it, and everyone has to come together and figure out a way to stop it. The Air Force is involved, the Prime Minister is involved, and there's a little bit of comedy, there's a lot of action, there's a lot of destruction. So yeah, and I thought it was just really interesting, kind of to broaden the scope that it's not just Hollywood that and like and Toho Studios can make these big kaiju movies. It's cool to see one coming out of Norway. So if you want to watch something different on Netflix, definitely it's worth checking out. I think that the motion capture and like the CGI of the troll is fairly good. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
I will jump over. I'm going to do two back to back, but I'm going to talk to them through the same lens, I think. Quentin Tarantino's films have been coming out on 4K. There's been a slow, steady trickle. The first one this year, I think, might have been Inglourious Bastards, and then Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and then Reservoir Dogs, and then Pulp Fiction is the order I got them in.
Mm-hmm.
I finally, so I had started rewatching Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. That is a movie that when I saw it in the theater, I was less than enthused about. It wasn't my favorite of his films,
Mm-hmm.
but I I have a lot of respect for the people who are in it, and a lot of people talk about it with a lot of reverence. And I
Mm-hmm.
decided with the Steelbook coming out that and hopefully a really good 4K transfer, I would add it to my collection and I would feel better about it.
Yeah.
It took me a long time to finish it. So I
Wow.
watched about the first half of it and I sort of left it for about a month and never really got back to it. The sequences with Leonardo DiCaprio being sort of a broken down old actor are really uncomfortable. They
Mm.
are not a negative on Leo or the directing choices, but for me, it was a slog to get through the middle of the movie. I felt really dragged down into the mud for a long portion of the time. It's ironic that we're talking about this after Amsterdam because both Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and Amsterdam have our friend Timothy Oliphant in it.
Oh.
In Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, he is the new protagonist in the show where Leo's character is playing the heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And in Amsterdam, Timothy Oliphant, I feel like his one note was "make me ugly," which is really funny. That
Wow.
he's fun in the movie, but for a second I was like, "That's Timothy Oliphant not looking as handsome and charming as he always does." And then you're
It's
like,
just
"Oh
hard.
yeah, we're just playing with him." Like he came in for like 3 days to be like, "Yeah, I'll do some wacky shit for you."
Right.
So I rewatched Pulp Fiction when that came in.
Mm-hmm.
After watching Reservoir Dogs, I was really excited to revisit Pulp Fiction. And Pulp Fiction, except for a few sequences that everyone knows, uh, is still holds up in a really unbelievable way.
Mm.
I texted friends of mine who I saw this film with back in the day, and I took a ton of screenshots of this film. It's the transfer is beautiful. It
Wow.
is absolutely gorgeous. The sound is the original 5.1 DTS master audio track, but
Uh-huh.
that's all this film needs. It's not a heavily sound effecty movie. It's a lot of dialogue, and
A
the
lot of music.
directional sound on the original 5.1 mix is really good.
Hmm.
so much so that like when you're in the shop for the first time and you hear things going on in another room, they are like far away and right in the right spot. And then you get, you know, Bruce Willis jumping up and getting a samurai sword. You hear all these like things falling that he's trying, because he's also in a bad spot at that point. So the directional sound, it really worked. I was really impressed with how good it transferred. And
Cool.
honestly, I don't think this movie's ever looked better. Like I saw it opening night back in the day at a Cineplex Odeon in Park Slope. Might have been Court Street. I'm pretty sure we all went and saw it at Court Street, which is no longer there. But that experience was unbelievable because it was all of us coming together after only seeing Reservoir Dogs and living it for like a year. Like that was like our safety movie. We would put it on every day or whenever we were together as a group. And we were all so excited for Pulp Fiction, and it really brought me right back to that experience. It is, in my opinion, to this day, still Quentin's masterpiece. He's done a lot of really great things, but that is the movie that I think captured the darkness of humanity, the biting nature of race, the quick-wittedness of characters, and the little bit of fun that connects the dots for us.
Yeah, it definitely was a. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah,
I was just gonna say, yeah, I think it definitely for kids who saw it in our age range, it was a very important movie. I think it was like, you know, that soundtrack was really incredible. I think everyone had that soundtrack. It was like a different thing that, like, you know, we had not heard before. And yeah, and I think like that was probably a lot of kids' first R-rated movie, to be honest.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's also got some of the most like perfect needle drops. Like all the sequences with Uma Thurman with music are like spot on. Like
And
Son of a
also
Preacher Man,
yeah.
you know, like every one of those sequences is so unbelievably precise. And Quentin absolutely uses music to punctuate scenes in ways that like other people want to. Right? Like that I feel like that those sequences, if you go from the front door at Marcellus Wallace's house to Jack Rabbit Slim's to the house to the drug dealer back to the house, there's like 6 needle drop moments that if you want to think about how to use music to punctuate your film, it's been done. Stop it. Like no one else is going to do it better than this is what it feels like, you know?
All right. Yeah. I was gonna say, well, who would I choose? Who would I think could maybe do it as good as he?
Well, it's also just the use of audio, right? Like it's so fun because you've got a really high Vic Vega, right? Like he's been doing the heroin that he just bought that is like super like what is Eric Stoltz's character call it? Like this is the motherfucker or something like that. He like shoots up the like the best heroin that's in LA and then drives over to her house. So he's like super high when he gets to the door and there's a sign on the door. And then you get a voiceover of Uma Thurman reading the note to him, right? So it's his internal monologue is in her voice. Yeah. And then she comes, like, she's immediately watching him because it's all on cameras. And she's the voice of God, right? Like, so we're hearing it everywhere. She's coming out of the speaker, right? But we're hearing it as though it's like the voice of God. And she's got such a distinct voice. And she's just like, hello, Vincent. You know, and like you can feel her leaning on the microphone. And then what's awesome is he can't figure it out because he's high, and she's just like, it's it's over there, and like she points him toward it verbally, and then as he's going, she's like, warmer, 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 disco, right? Like there's like just her way of speaking, she's so stylized. Everything about Uma Thurman in that film is so like precise, and then to have that sequence break down the way that it does is really amazing.
Yeah, definitely a very seminal. Is that the right word?
It is. It was for me, for sure.
Seminal film for me.
I mean, I think it's probably the first time I was excited to go see something that I felt like was, and I didn't know it at the time, about like an auteur who like from writing to directing to the vision of the movie. And I feel like I knew it was a Quentin Tarantino film going in, right? Because I had spent so much time and I went out of my way to see the next Quentin Tarantino film. Not that I was going to see a Bruce Willis film or an Uma Thurman film, right? Like that wasn't what the drive was. It was to see a
Right.
Tarantino film,
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah, it's super fun.
Well,
If you are into physical media, I will say the Inglorious Bastards is not a great release. The Once Upon a Time in Hollywood feels very, very gauzy, like they're trying to make it look like a film from the 50s or 60s,
right.
especially after seeing Reservoir Dogs, which is like hyper realistic and almost cartoonesque in its color. It feels like they stole a color palette from like Japanese mob films or
Hmm.
like the color palette is so stark. It's like black and white and red, right?
Yeah.
And then you get to Pulp Fiction, and it is extremely crisp everywhere, but it is some of the most like defined scenes in my brain. So watching Once Upon a Time in Hollywood after that felt like a disappointment because it's so gauzy in nature. It almost feels like we're trying to make it feel like a 60s film, and it was like, God, I just watched this that came out in 94 and it looks so amazing. And this was
Yeah.
in 2017. And I understood the effect they were trying to go for, but it lost its impact on me because I had
Hmm.
watched the first half and then watched these other two films and then came back to it.
Yeah.
All right, buddy, let's jump into our main review.
Yeah.
You ready to
So
rock and roll?
yeah, let's do this. So we're almost an hour in. That's not
Yeah.
bad. This is
We're
normal
gonna
for
we're gonna
us.
coast in under an hour and a half this time. I
Yeah.
have faith.
So we wanted to talk about Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, which is available on Netflix. This is the retelling of the classic story Pinocchio through Guillermo del Toro's eye. He was very prolific with the character designs. He rewrote the story.
Yep.
So this is not this is not Disney's Pinocchio. This is not even really the original Pinocchio by Carlo Collodi. I think his name is,
Mm-hmm.
who is the gentleman who originally wrote
Wrote
the
the
story
book. Yep.
before before Disney got their hands on it. I mean, off the top of my head, this is incredible. This movie was incredible.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful piece of art. Visual, like, and to just talk first visually, it's visually stunning, and what they have done painstakingly through um, stop motion animation is incredible. Um, and then on top of that, I think that um, what Guillermo del Toro has done with the story is really compelling. I think there's beautiful music in it, and I think that this is this is like one of those movies that I think if I was a young child watching this movie, I would be in awe of it, but I would also know, like, oh, there are things going over my head, and I can't wait to watch this when I'm older as well.
Yep.
I think it's something that like everyone can watch, and I think that it will bring up really important questions and really important conversations within a household about mortality, about what it is to be in a family. Um, what are the roles of parents and fathers and sons and things. So I was blown away by this movie. I was so impressed. What were your
Yeah.
thoughts on the movie?
I want you to take a minute also to think about it while I'm talking about like the lens of you being a puppeteer and the work you've done. And I thought of you so much during watching this that like
Mm,
the painstaking nature of being a puppeteer and the precision, but then to take it to stop motion animation, I feel like you have a unique perspective probably that even others who aren't in the arts or even who are in the arts that aren't puppeteers would have. So just wanted to throw that your direction to think about a little bit. I will
yeah.
say I could not believe going into this how excited I was to see this movie. I wasn't expecting to be excited about Pinocchio, but the first trailer came out and I was blown away by the visuals. The decision to so I don't know if you watch the making of that's on Netflix.
I did. Yeah.
There's the ability to choose multiple. They decided to go with multiple different types of puppets,
Hmm.
including on Pinocchio because he's made of wood. They wanted the traditional like mask replacement for his face, and
Yeah.
and there's so many like little nods that I think are so perfect. Like the person who designed Pinocchio talked about the fact that they wanted his smile to feel like somebody hit it with an axe, right? Like
Hmm.
it would be like one clean cut, and you feel the fact that everything about Pinocchio feels like wood. Yet we
Yeah.
know he's 3D printed, right? Like so the wood grain is beautiful. But the thing I didn't realize, and I'm not aware because I'm not a puppeteer, is like with the choice to make him appear as solid wood, you lose the cheeks in expressions and you
Hmm.
lose the brows and you lose the underbrows, right? So it's amazing to afterwards watching this, there's so much emotion that comes through Pinocchio.
Yeah.
And you realize that they actively went out of their way to like to do what Guillermo del Toro talks about in that making of, which is we need to watch people's reactions. We need to let characters react to the world. In animation, we spend so much time focusing on the person talking, but reaction and absorption of knowledge is how we do acting in the real world. So why
Hmm.
wouldn't we do that in animation? Felt like his approach. And I think it works so well. And I think it's what humanized these characters. And I think the choice to make them a little cartoony and a little bit like not of this world did not take away any of the impact and actually sort of heightened it. I think Geppetto's the puppet of Geppetto is gorgeous. Like his
Yeah.
ability, the range of motion that they are able to pull off because of the beard and because of the decision to make the character who he was, right? And voiced in this case by such an unbelievable actor, right? Like behind the scenes, you've got David Bradley, who is been in everything from Harry Potter to Game of Thrones, right?
Yeah.
But he has this
And
ability to
Hellboy, I
like,
think too.
yeah, to his voice ranges in really interesting ways. He can escalate in like a couple of syllables from like a slow growl to a roar in ways that I don't know that other actors can pull off.
Hmm.
Um, I was just I could not stop being enamored with the production design. It's almost to the detriment of the movie that I kept coming back to like this is freaking gorgeous. Like I can't stop being enamored with the idea of what they're doing. And I can't wait to watch it again so I can take a step back and be like, all right, I know it's gorgeous. Like I just need to watch the movie now. Like
Right.
because I just kept getting caught up in I can't believe they pulled this off. I can't believe the scope of this and the you know the sequence with the monkey swinging down the staircase and you
Hmm.
realize after watching the making of right like that is a one take basically like it took them 3 months to shoot that as they're like
Yeah.
swinging down like it's because Guillermo's nuts and also is like this is how we shoot film like why would we
Yeah.
shoot it differently here you know
Yeah.
I loved so much of it I can't wait to rewatch it is the highest praise I can give it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think talking about like kind of the artists that are involved in making these things come to life, like I consider them, they consider like my brother-in-law, full disclosure, my brother-in-law is a stop motion animator, and many times like they consider themselves puppeteers, and I think people in the puppetry world should consider them puppeteers. I consider them puppeteers, but they are just working at a much slower pace as like someone who like is on stage, bringing something to life. They have to like painstakingly move things at a certain way to make it feel and look organic. There are a lot of times in this movie where I was like, that's not stop motion. That's motion capture because it just looks so beautiful and so smooth. And there are like there are just minor movements that Pinocchio and all the other characters do that you're like that's a lot of research and a lot of like attention to detail. I thought that the movements were they were so intricate, and when you're doing that in live puppetry, it's like it's still attention to detail, but it's very easy to do live. But then when you're doing it with stop motion, that's hours and hours of work to move things, just micro movements. So I was so very impressed with their attention to detail, and I just thought it was incredible. One of the things that I also thought was really incredible with this was like, when Cricket, voiced by Ewan McGregor, appears, he looks small on the screen, but he's like a bigger puppet, and then they have to make an even bigger Pinocchio puppet, um, to kind of work around that. So the difference in depths and sizing and all this other things that you take for granted when you're, I don't know, with like normal animation you take for granted, but like when you're dealing with like physical pieces of art that you're manipulating, it's just so amazing.
I think the thing I really wanted to point out was they had to go back and rework the script because they realized about probably about a year, I think, a year and a half before they were going to complete that Guillermo felt like the villain was just sort of a caricature, like a big burly massive character that
Hmm.
felt wrong.
Hmm.
And that's when they rewrote the script to really turn the entire thing around and make it Count Volpe,
Hmm.
voiced by Christopher Waltz. So, when they talk about that character, they talk about him almost feeling like the devil incarnate, right? Like his
Hmm.
hair almost feels like it could be horns.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there's something unbelievably beautiful about the way the textures are captured throughout the movie.
Hmm.
They talked at one point about trying to find like the pants that the monkey wears. Spatzazora, who is
Played by
voiced by
Kate
Kate Blanchett,
Blanchett.
which
Yeah.
is unreal. Yeah. So if you haven't watched the documentary, you can obviously tell that we're both really enamored with it because there's so much detail given. But they talked about they found materials. There was 5 materials that they wanted to evaluate to determine which one of them was going to be the pants that the monkey wore,
Hmm.
and everyone pointed to one, and they were like, okay, now great, is there something we can describe about why this one works and apply it to the rest of the film? So it was
Hmm.
a really interesting like treatise on how creative minds work, which I think was even cooler. And
Right.
then the Kate Blanchett piece that's really unbelievable is they had just finished Nightmare Alley, and she like looked over and she was like, Guillermo, I hear you're doing Pinocchio, and he's like, I have one character left to voice, it's a monkey. And she's like, I would be a pencil in your movie. Like, what do we do?
Yeah.
So, but she took it so seriously, and every like, there's so much love put into the recording sessions, and everyone's got. There's no scene in any of the documentary where somebody's not smiling.
Yeah.
Most of them smiling at Guillermo, right? Like
Hmm.
he is such a like lover of art, and it seems to be just like oozing off of him at all times. Like I can only imagine working near him is like working near somebody who's just like a charisma of like 22 naturally, right? Like if
Hmm.
20 is the most you can have, like he just is like he's like the fairy godfather of like film right now is what it feels like.
Yeah, he definitely is. He definitely is the guy who kind of brings fairy tales to life. I mean, if you look
Yeah.
at most of his work, there is some sort of otherworldly fairy tale esque thing to it, and I think that's his aesthetic. Like, I was blown away when even when you go all the way to like Blade 2, which he did, which is incredible. His blueprint is on that. When you look at Hellboy and Hellboy 2, and the what's the Pan's Labyrinth and the Shape of Water.
Yep.
That's what it's called, right? Shape of Water. Yeah.
Yep.
It and he's just my one of my favorite creators and artists out there. Like I don't even want to say like filmmaker, because I feel like a lot of what he does and the things that he puts into his films are so much more than just filmmaking.
In
Yeah.
an interview, I heard somebody ask him a question about going and animation, and he very pointedly said, like, he's always been an animator. That he had a company
Hmm.
that was an animation studio in Guadalajara, where he was about to shoot an animation film that they had worked 2 years on the puppets, and the night before the shoot, someone broke into the place and destroyed the puppets.
Ugh.
So what is full circle here is the animators and the
Hmm.
puppeteers that worked on this out of the Guadalajara studio are the people that Guillermo worked with
Right.
like 17 years ago. Like he wanted to bring back work to Mexico, but also show that Mexican artists and creatives are as good as anywhere else in the world. So
Hmm.
like he's not just an ambassador for film and for animation and for all these things, but he's like an ambassador for Mexico and Mexican culture. And it makes me love him more, right? Like
Yeah.
he's a guy I just want to like spend. I would love to sit and have people talk about like back in the day, like if you choose 4 people to sit and have dinner with, right? Like, boy, I would love to sit with like Kevin Smith and Guillermo, right? Like, as
Mm,
because they love one another. And Kevin always, Guillermo always jokes around that he's like the Mexican version of Kevin, like
mm.
because they both have a love of cinema, the way they like protect their friends, the way
Sure. Yeah.
and Kevin's always like, "You're way better than me," right? Like, is basically a starting point. But I just think that he exudes some like love of and protection of everyone who's a part of his orbit. It's
Mm.
that like we were talking about it last week, I think, when we talked about uh, James Gunn, right? Like, and the holiday special, right? Like,
Yeah.
you feel like you've got a troupe with like that James Gunn. He built his crew and he brings them along. I feel
Right.
like Guillermo, every movie is building and adding to his crew, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's unbelievable how many people are just like in his orbit nowadays,
Yeah.
and happy to do anything he asks.
Yeah. Yeah. Ron Perlman is in voices a character in this. He's in a lot of Guillermo del Toro's movies. Um, like we said before, David Bradley has worked with him, I think, twice before this.
Yep.
Bern Gorman, who does another voice, was in. Well, he was in Nightmare Alley, but he was also in Pacific Rim, which is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yep.
And also, I just want to also talk about Gregory Mann, who is the voice of Pinocchio. What a beautiful voice, and
Yes.
he does such a wonderful performance, and I think that is not only a testament to him, but also Guillermo like directing him in his voice direction. It's just so real and so honest and so sincere. And the thing that I think that's really interesting about this version of Pinocchio is he Pinocchio he's a reincarnation in a sense. He's a borrowed soul,
Mhm.
and I'm not trying to give too much away, but we all kind of know the story of Pinocchio. But he is the borrowed soul of Geppetto's lost son, and he's kind of but he has no inhibitions because he's just like happy to be alive, and it's so interesting to kind of see him walk through the world and have to learn how to like navigate situations and the the world as a scary place, or you have like this is what it means to be good. And um it's just, and like in another part that I really loved about this was just like the creation of Pinocchio, because it wasn't pretty, and it wasn't magical in a sense when he's initially being made. It was very much more like scary Frankensteiny, like
Yes.
sad, depressed, drunken dad missing his lost son, and like doing this thing because he was at his wits end and was like at rock bottom, and didn't know what else to do. um yeah, it's just such a wonderful piece, and I think it's gonna be I think this, I don't want to use this word very often when I talk about movies, but like this movie will be a classic, I think. And
Yep.
I think that this is a movie that you should be proud to show your little ones and reintroduce more little ones to it. And I think yeah, it's just a great movie.
I think one last note there is I was so impressed with the way that the whole thing comes together. Its backdrop is set in fascist Italy,
Hmm.
and it feels like it's a part of the story, but it also doesn't. And it does drive some of the storyline, but
Hmm.
you never lose the thread of Pinocchio as a boy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just him fumbling through the world at times. And to harken back to what you talked about at the drunken creation, there's if you look at the Pinocchio face, the his right side is pristine and perfect, and his left side is not completed. There's an
Mm.
ear hole where a knot is, whereas his right ear is perfectly carved. That's because Geppetto's getting more drunk
Right. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
less precise. So it plays into the character, even like that you get this like Geppetto's not a perfect father, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
That we saw him lashing out at the tree, right? For, well, fine, then I'll use this tree to replace my boy, right? Like,
Hmm.
it's not something I think we see a lot of in animation. The other thing to note is that Guillermo is a big believer in sometimes the mistake that happens on set is the most important aspect of the scene.
Mm-hmm.
So they actually build in some mistakes into the movement of the characters, but it has to feel real. So there's a moment where Geppetto goes to like move a balloon and it gets wrapped on his foot and he like has to get it off. But like all of that is planned out, but looks like something that all of us have done. Like you go to kick a
Right.
balloon and the string gets wrapped around your foot, and you're like, so there's a lot of those little moments to like add the humanity into these characters that I don't think other animation directors are thinking about,
Mm.
which is one of the reasons why I think it feels so real.
Yeah. Yeah, and the and like the ending is like happy and sad. I'll say that, but
Yeah,
beautiful because it's happy and sad.
it really is.
Um, yeah, it's just like if you haven't seen it yet, I hope we have. Like, I feel like when movies touch us in like right in our hearts in on this podcast, we don't want to spoil them, and I think this is obviously one of those that doesn't we don't really want to spoil. But we all kind of also know like the story of Pinocchio, so it's really exciting to like see like a refreshing, different take on it.
Yep.
That was not, and I will say this was not done to make a buck.
No.
It there was a there he Guillermo wanted to say something, and he wanted to use the retelling of Pinocchio to say it. Whereas, I had brought up, and it's just so much more clear now. But like seeing the Disney Plus live action version of the Disney's Pinocchio, good God, was that a cash grab that just went terribly wrong. And it's just like watching this and watching that is it's just so obvious how different they are.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I think if you haven't watched it yet, please check out Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio on Netflix. I don't know. I got nothing else. I think. What about you?
I think, this is one where I would say I'm very lucky that I have a good television and a pretty good sound system because
Mm.
I took so many photos of this movie and posted a bunch of them to my personal Twitter because I just couldn't get over how beautiful it is.
Hmm.
So do yourself a favor if you have access to it or you have a friend who has a pretty good television. Go out of your way to see it as on as good a television as you can. The amount of detail in every frame deserves it. And the John was talking about the amount of work that goes into these. I think in the last thing I'll note is Guillermo was asked something about on one of the interviews that about the time it takes to do these things, and he said one of the animators didn't leave one of the sets for 6 months. He was in the same set, moving the same character for 6 months, and it was the set with Tilda Swinton's character that she voices, but never left that set for 6 months. Literally in the same space with the same characters, filming probably 12 minutes of footage. When asked about like how long does it take to get a minute of screen time, and he's like, I don't know. He used that as an example. He's like, sometimes we be lucky if we can get 12 seconds out of a month on one of the sets. Like
Right. Yeah.
that is the level of dedication to creating this movie that everyone involved was a part of, and that is astounding.
Yeah. I will also say this movie is in theaters. Like they released it in theaters. So if you
Yeah.
for some reason don't have Netflix, you should try to see this on the big screen. I mean, considering it, like I might want to see this on a big ass screen
Yeah.
instead of my television. So, because we didn't
Maybe
even,
sneak out before Wednesday because Avatar is about to take over every big
yeah.
screen around.
And also like really quick, I guess this is that just reminded me. Like we didn't even talk about the music, but there is music in this.
Yeah.
It's a movie with music in it. It's not a musical, but the music is so charming. It's
Yeah.
not very musical.
Hmm.
A lot of times like it's music that he like Pinocchio singing like on a stage, like a puppet stage. But besides that, it's just like it's all really charming. It's not like I felt like the music, the vocals are not like very polished, and it's not like a big like showy number. It's just like a very sincere, like if like a father who's not a professional singer was singing to his son kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah, it's just super charming.
I think the last thing to note is I think this movie only cost 35 million to make, which sounds crazy for that's an only number, but this movie is obviously looks like it cost 3 times that, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You know, when we start to talk about budgets for films, right? Like they worked on this film. Guillermo's been trying to make this film for like 17 years. But they actually started production back in 2015, I think it was, when he started really pulling together what he thought the script was going to be and some of the background and some of the heads of his departments. They started actively working in 2016. Mm-hmm. So they worked all through the pandemic to make this film, right? Like, yeah. I mean, it's probably got like a 4.5-year production cycle or something like that to make this film. And you can see it. At one point, he said there were 60 individual sets that were actively shooting, which the director of photography's head almost exploded because he had to have 60 action rigs where they could move the camera. And he's like, I just didn't have any more cameras. Like, you know, is really what it came down to. So yeah. It's unbelievable the amount of logistics it takes to make an animated film. It takes a lot to make any film, but like to think about a film like this, that they worked, it's only 117 minutes, which is not the shortest animated film. Most animated films come in under 90. Right, because every minute costs $1 million is what the ongoing statement is. So at least in American animation, that's what they usually talk about. But 117 minutes, and it only cost about $35 million to make. This is a movie that's going to make its money back in cinema. Like, in my opinion, forget about what Netflix paid for it. You know?
Yeah.
It was an astounding experience. I can't wait to see it again. And I'm with you, John. If you get a chance and there's a theater around that you can jump into before Avatar takes everything over. And I only mention that because that's going to be the film we do next. And I've already looked and it's amazing. My local AMC, I think 7 of the theaters, 9 or 11 theaters is already scheduled for Avatar this weekend. Like, and it's about to like clear everything out.
Yeah, I'm sure that the movie times are starting very early in the morning and going till very late at night too.
Yeah, I almost got a 10:35 showing on Friday, but I moved it back to the afternoon because I'm crazy, but not that crazy, and I also would like to rewatch Avatar. So I look forward to our conversation next week and revisiting and getting unobtainium and all kinds of
other revisiting Pandora.
Oh yes, we're revisiting Pandora. So
I don't know if they're going to talk about unobtainium in this one because everyone made fun of it in the first one. So
I look forward to that conversation. And this was a really fun conversation. This movie, if you can't tell, we were both kind of gushing about it. Like, I don't know that we stopped smiling when we got to the main review. And I spent a lot of time not smiling in the other movies reviews because
it's the opposite of Amsterdam, friends.
It is the opposite. There's no doubt about that. We're really happy to have you along with us on this journey. Thank you for being with us for 20 episodes. We look forward to the next 20. And I look forward to chatting with you about Pandora and all things James Cameron. Because like you cannot, there's no way you can bet against this guy.
Nope. All right, guys. Thanks for listening. Have a wonderful time at the cinema.
Go see Pinocchio. See ya. This has been a Geek on Film podcast. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.